Hi, I'm Maribel. My sister laughed when our father left me a broken-down gas station instead of a penny in cash. She said it was a mercy gift. The rest of my family backed her up, said I was unstable, unfit, unworthy. But then I found a torn photo, a hidden key, and a file labeled for Maribel only. Turns out, what they called junk was a $300 million federal secret. They wanted me to feel like nothing, so why was the FBI knocking on my door? The Texas sun was relentless that morning, even in October. It clung to the black dress I hadn't worn since my divorce hearing. The kind of heat that made your skin itch and your memory sharper than it had any business being. I stood in front of the church, my hand wrapped tightly around Eris's, staring at the steps like they were the edge of a cliff. Inside, people were already seated. The service had started 10 minutes ago. I took a breath, adjusted the strap of my purse, and stepped through the doors. The air conditioning inside blasted against my skin like a lie. Too cold, too clean, trying too hard to hide what was already rotting beneath the surface. An usher barely glanced at me before gesturing toward the back pew. "Name?" he asked, flipping through a list. "Maribel Ridgway," I answered. He squinted. "Don't see that here? Ah. Visitor. That's you." He handed me a name tag that read exactly that. Visitor, in block caps. The adhesive strip barely clung to my dress. Eris leaned into me. "Why does it say that?" I smiled tightly. "Because it's easier for them than spelling my name right." We slid into the last row, near the restrooms. The scent of bleach and hand soap drifted over every few seconds, reminding me where they thought I belonged. Up front, Callista sat like the queen of a kingdom I'd never been invited into, dressed in a navy suit that probably cost more than my car. Her hair was pinned into a sleek chignon, not a strand out of place. She turned her head slightly, made eye contact with me for half a second, then looked away like I wasn't even there. A man in a crisp gray suit, probably her new campaign advisor, leaned in to whisper something. She laughed softly. Of course she did. The pastor's voice cut through the low hum. "And now, a few words from the eldest daughter of Mr. Roberto Ridgway." Callista rose like she'd been waiting her whole life for this moment. She walked to the podium slowly, every step measured, heels clicking against the marble like a countdown. She smiled. Warm, rehearsed, insincere. "My father was a man of integrity, vision, and discipline. He taught us how to build things that last, how to carry ourselves with grace even when the world was watching." "Us?" I thought. Her eyes scanned the crowd, never landing on me. She continued, voice steady. "He left us more than memories. He left us a legacy, and I intend to honor that, just as he would have wanted." A camera flash lit up from the third row. A photographer from the local paper was snapping away. Image mattered more than anything else in Callista's world. I clenched my jaw. My hands gripped the edge of the pew, knuckles white. I could feel my heart trying to crawl up my throat. She hadn't said my name, not once. When the eulogy ended, applause broke out. Applause. At a funeral. The service moved on, but I didn't hear a word. My mind was back at the gas station. I saw my dad's hands, covered in motor oil, waving me over to help him with the pump register. I remembered the day he showed me how to fix a flat, telling me, "Always know how to get yourself out of a jam, mija." A part of me wanted to stand and speak, to tell the truth. But as I shifted forward, an usher leaned down. "Sorry, ma'am, we're out of time." Of course we were. After the final hymn, people shuffled outside. The sun hadn't cooled. Neither had my rage. Near the side doors, a group of Callista's friends clustered like flies around a champagne glass. One of them, wearing a blazer 2 sizes too small and a smirk too wide, looked me up and down. "At least she got the gas station," she said. "That counts as charity, right?" Another one laughed. "Could always turn it into a taco truck." Callista, still smiling, tossed her hair and added, "Some inherit legacies, others inherit leftovers." They all chuckled. I didn't flinch. I just took Eris's hand and walked right past them. In the parking lot, we approached my car. 15 years old, paint peeling, the kind of car that announces itself with every rattle and wheeze. Eris climbed in quietly. She looked out the window at the clusters of laughing adults in tailored clothes and expensive sunglasses. "Why are we the only ones not smiling?" she asked. I started the engine, gripping the wheel tightly. "Because we don't fake it as well as they do." She nodded like she understood, even if she didn't fully yet. I glanced at the church in the rearview mirror. My eyes narrowed. "Let them laugh," I said, my voice steady now. "That gas station holds more truth than they ever could." And I meant it. When we got home, I didn't take my heels off, didn't unpin my hair. I just dropped my keys on the counter and collapsed onto the old sofa, the one my father used to complain squeaked too much. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the air conditioner kicking in. False comfort, the kind that cooled the skin, but not the burn inside. My phone had been vibrating since the moment we left the church. I'd ignored it out of habit, or maybe instinct. But now it was persistent, notifications flooding in like a faucet left running. A message popped up first, from Jenna, an old friend from high school. "You okay? Saw what Callista posted? That was cold." I frowned. What now? I tapped open Instagram, and there it was. Callista, striking a perfect pose in front of the gas station. The caption read, "Some inherit legacy, others inherit leftovers." Over 3,000 likes. And in the comments, laughing emojis, fire emojis, a few of our distant cousins chiming in with savage lol and tell it queen. One comment stopped me cold. "Looks like a great spot for a taco truck or a haunted house." I didn't feel anger right away. What I felt first was something deeper. That sting you get when you're not just excluded, but mocked for even existing. From the hallway, Eris's bedroom door creaked open. She stood there, clutching her backpack. "Mom, I saw the post. At school." I sat up. "You okay?" She shook her head. "Someone said you inherited a crack house." I felt the heat rise behind my eyes. "What did you say back?" "I asked to go home. Can you come get me early tomorrow?" I nodded. That night, I tucked her in without saying much. There weren't enough words for how helpless a mother feels when her child has to flinch in public because of something so private. Later, sitting at the kitchen table, I remembered a quote I once heard Maya Angelou say in an interview. "People will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel." And I felt tired. Tired of being made to feel like I didn't belong in my own life. The next day, I kept my promise to Eris. I signed her out of school early, but not before a scheduled meeting with her school counselor, one I hadn't requested. Mrs. Jeffers sat across from me, polite but firm, clasping her hands like she rehearsed concern for a living. "We've had to make a decision regarding Eris's application for the Regional Merit Scholarship," she said. I nodded. "Go on." "Due to recent visibility and concerns around public stability, the committee believes it's best to withdraw her candidacy." "Visibility?" I repeated. "There's been a lot of attention around your family recently, and social optics do matter, especially in competitive programs." I didn't raise my voice, didn't argue. I just nodded slowly and stood. "Thank you," I said. On the way out, I muttered just loud enough for her to hear. That school's lucky I believe in grace. By the end of that week, Callista's post had made it onto 2 local blog sites under headlines like, "When Sibling Rivalry Turns Public," and "Corpus Christi's PR Queen Strikes Again." Even at work, the air shifted. My supervisor at the community center pulled me aside. "Everything stable at home?" she asked with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just a little gas station and family drama," I replied. "Nothing new." The thing about small towns, once a narrative starts, it rolls. And I'd become that girl with the gas station, the pitied one, the whispered about one, the meme. That evening, I found myself driving, not home, not anywhere in particular. My hands turned the wheel until they brought me to the front lot of Estrella, my father's gas station. The place looked the same as always: chipped paint, dusty windows, one of the pumps still wrapped in yellow tape. I parked, engine still running. The twilight bled orange over the asphalt. In my dad's old truck, left to me with everything else no one wanted, I opened the glove box. Amid old maps and a rusted screwdriver was an envelope. My name was on it. His handwriting. I stared at it for a long time, fingers barely grazing the seal. Before I could open it, my phone buzzed again. A new message, no name, no number. You don't know what you've inherited. I looked up at the gas station. The windows were dark, but something inside me sparked. Like maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just about oil-stained pavement and rusted pumps. Maybe the story was only beginning. The next morning felt unnaturally still, like the world was holding its breath. After the anonymous message last night, I hadn't slept much. The words kept replaying in my mind like a broken record. You don't know what you've inherited. And the worst part? I didn't. It wasn't just about the gas station anymore, or the Instagram post, or the scholarship. It was about something deeper. A thread tugging at a memory I didn't even know was loose. I got up early, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table, the hum of the refrigerator my only company. Eris was still asleep. I glanced at the envelope from the glove box, still unopened, still daring me. But I didn't reach for it. Not yet. Instead, I grabbed one of the dusty boxes from the hallway closet, one of the ones I hadn't touched since the day we cleared out my father's storage unit. The box smelled like old paper and motor oil, a scent that somehow hurt more than it comforted. I dug through faded documents, receipts from the 80s, a few broken tools, and then I found it. An old photo album, split down the spine, pages curling with age. But what stopped me wasn't the wear. It was the fact that one photograph had been torn in half. Carefully, intentionally. It was a family photo, one of the few we'd taken together. My mother had insisted on coordinating outfits. Everyone looked stiff, except for my father and me. We were laughing, and that's the part that had been torn. Right down the middle of my face. The rest of the family remained intact. Taped to the back of the album was a small post-it, yellowed and curling at the edges. It was his handwriting, unmistakable even now. She'll try to rewrite everything. No name, no date, just that. I sat back, breath caught in my chest. Was he talking about Callista? About how she'd curated his obituary, rewritten his eulogy, erased me in public and online? Suddenly, I was 12 again. Not in this kitchen, but back at the station, paintbrush in hand, helping my dad repaint the side wall. My siblings had refused, said it was too hot, but I stayed. You know, he had said, dabbing paint over the rusted letters, legacy isn't about what you build. It's about who stays when it starts falling apart. That moment had stayed buried in me, like a coin lost between couch cushions, but now it clinked loud and clear in my memory. After finishing my coffee, I got in my car and drove across town to a junkyard near the edge of the city, one of the places my father had rented storage from. Most of his belongings had been auctioned or cleared, but I remembered the man who ran the place, Eddie, had pulled me aside once and said, "Your dad left something you might want." Eddie was behind the desk, sipping Mountain Dew from a glass jar. When he saw me, he didn't say hello. He just stood, walked to a shelf in the back, and returned with a cardboard box the size of a toaster oven. "He said you'd be the one to come back," he murmured. I took the box, thanked him, and left. Back home, I opened it carefully. Nestled between rags and old keys was a metal toolbox, the kind my father used to carry in his truck. Inside, on top of rusted pliers and a tape measure, was the other half of the photograph, perfectly preserved, intact. I brought both halves to the dining table and sat for a long time before gently lining them up, taping them together along the seam. There we were, him and me, laughing like we knew something no one else in the picture did. The rest of them, my mother, Callista, our brother Marcus, were all stiff, posed, disconnected. I stared at the photo, really stared at it, and something inside me shifted. He hadn't torn it out of anger. He had separated it to preserve it, because we were the only ones in the picture who looked like we belonged together. I found a small frame in the hallway cabinet, brushed off the dust, and slid the photo in. But as I did, something dropped from behind the backing. A flash drive. It was small, black, unlabeled. My fingers curled around it instinctively. I walked to the living room and grabbed the old laptop I used for bookkeeping. It wheezed awake, blue light casting long shadows across the rug. I plugged in the drive. One folder appeared, Maribel only. No password prompt. Just that. I hovered the cursor over it, my hand unsteady for the first time in days. At that moment, Eris walked in, rubbing her eyes. "Mom, what is that?" I didn't look away from the screen. I think this is the part of the story no one else was ever meant to see. I clicked on the folder. It opened without resistance. No password, no warning. Just a series of neatly labeled subfolders, each one holding scanned documents. Not just family papers, but official forms. Property deeds, notarized affidavits, signatures I didn't remember being involved in. At first glance, it looked legitimate. The seal of the county clerk's office was stamped cleanly on every page. But something caught my eye. My name. Or rather, the absence of it. The deed transfer to the gas station, the designation of power of attorney. None of them listed me. And yet I was the one who buried him. The one who paid the overdue utility bills on the property. The one he'd left the key to. If this was a mistake, it was dressed up to look professional. If it was intentional, it was sloppy in its arrogance. By noon, I'd dressed, pulled my hair back into a bun, and driven myself to the county clerk's office. The receptionist, a young man with a face too cheerful for a records building, smiled as he asked what I needed. "I'm here to verify a property record," I said. He tapped away at the keyboard, asked for the parcel number. I gave him the gas station's address. "Looks like this was filed under Callista Breckenridge," he said. I stared. "That's not possible. That's mine." He glanced over the screen. "There's a power of attorney authorization here, signed months before Mr. Ridgway passed. It gave her rights over his estate. That's why she could transfer it." I swallowed hard. "I need a printout." He printed it without hesitation. I left with the papers folded tight in my purse, like a threat waiting to be read again. Back in my car, I took out my father's hospital discharge documents. He had been sedated the entire week the power of attorney was supposedly signed. The document date matched. The signature on the medical log, shaky, uneven, did not. I didn't have legal proof yet, but I had something better. Motive, timeline, a trail. That evening, while I was setting water to boil for pasta, there was a knock at the door. I almost didn't answer. It had been a day full of answers I didn't want, but something told me to. Mrs. Langley stood there, cardigan draped over one shoulder, like always, holding her phone. "I heard you were back," she said. I opened the screen door. "Just trying to stay out of the headlines." She smiled, then turned serious. "I have something I think you need to hear." She stepped inside, sat down like she'd done 100 times when I was a kid. Then she pressed play on her phone. The voice came through muffled at first, but then sharpened. "Just get him to sign it. He trusts you. We'll fix the rest in court if needed." Callista, clear as crystal. Mrs. Langley looked at me. "I recorded it by accident. She was talking to her assistant while I was watering my hydrangeas." I sat still for a moment, the sound of boiling water fading in the background. "Could you text me that file?" I asked. She nodded. "What will you do with it?" "Not sure yet," I said. "Let's see what else she's willing to hand me on a silver platter." The rest of the night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I scanned. I sorted. I matched dates and details like a lawyer prepping a deposition. I'd spent so long believing I had to wait for someone to validate my place at the table. I was done waiting. The next morning, as I walked to my car, my phone buzzed. I expected it to be Eris or a reminder from the bank. Instead, a crisp voice greeted me. Miss Ridgway? I'm calling on behalf of Miss Callista Breckenridge. I paused. Go on. She'd like to schedule a lunch to discuss a potential settlement. She believes it would be in everyone's best interest. I didn't answer right away. Hello, the voice prompted. I smiled, slow and steady. Tell her I'll be there, but I'm not coming to eat. I chose my outfit carefully that morning. Not for fashion, not to impress, but to control the narrative before I even opened my mouth. Navy blouse, gray slacks, low heels, a soft gold necklace my father once gave me for a birthday that everyone else forgot. Callista could walk in wearing whatever designer label she thought screamed dominance. I wasn't coming to compete. I was coming to win. There's a kind of power in silence. That was something Dad used to say. Let them fill the space. That's how they show you who they are. I carried a simple leather folder tucked under my arm, not bulky enough to look threatening, but it was heavy, with the weight of names, dates, signatures, and proof. The restaurant was exactly where I expected, a rooftop bistro downtown, the kind of place where Callista's name still got her a better table than a reservation did. The hostess smiled at her with recognition when she finally arrived, 12 minutes late, her hair gleaming and her legal assistant glued to her phone. I stood up as they approached. Callista air-kissed the air beside my cheek, then took her seat like she'd just descended from a throne. Well, she said, crossing one leg over the other, I thought it was time we de-escalated the tension, don't you agree? I said nothing, just nodded politely and unfolded my napkin. She took that as permission to keep going. I know things have been heated. I don't want to see this spiral into something ugly. We're family. Families don't falsify documents, I replied, calm as the iced water the waiter had just poured. Callista waved that off. You've been under stress. I get it. Losing a parent does strange things to people. It can confuse what's real and what's imagined. Then came the real reason we were here. Her assistant slid a thin folder across the table. A preliminary custody filing. Her name at the top. Eris's name underneath. I'm worried about your daughter. She deserves stability, normalcy. If this gas station becomes your full-time obsession, well, someone has to step up. My pulse didn't spike. I didn't raise my voice. I opened my own folder. Let me show you something, I said. I pulled out 2 documents and placed them side by side. One was the version of the will that Callista had filed. The other was an earlier copy, notarized and digitized 6 months before our father ever got sick. I tapped the date. This is what he intended, before he was sedated, before your assistant faxed over a revision from a rehab center. Callista kept her smile in place, but her assistant blinked twice and shifted in her seat. There are signatures here, I continued, that don't match. I've had them examined. I have hospital records that show he was not lucid the day this was supposedly signed. Callista leaned back in her chair. You misunderstand. Dad made adjustments. He was trying to protect the estate from unnecessary complications. Is that what you're calling me now? A complication? Her assistant began furiously tapping something into her phone. I didn't need to say more. I'd said enough. I tucked the originals back into my folder and placed a single photocopy beside Callista's bread plate. That's for you. You'll want it for your lawyer. As we stood, she leaned in close. If you think that station is worth your daughter, you'll regret it. I didn't flinch. I looked her in the eye. I was already sacrificed. She won't be. Outside, the sun had risen high and hot, but it felt different on my face. Like I could finally breathe in it. Like maybe for once, I was the one casting the shadow instead of standing in it. As I reached my car, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I answered. A male voice said, "You need to see what's under the gas station." The voice from the phone call echoed through my head long after I hung up. You need to see what's under the gas station. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a directive. One that pulled at something old in me, something buried beneath layers of grief and betrayal. I left early the next morning, before Eris was even awake. I scribbled a note, left it on the counter by her cereal box. The sun hadn't broken the horizon yet, but the streetlights flickered like they, too, were waking up slow. I didn't take the truck this time. I wanted to walk, to feel every step lead me somewhere no one else dared to go. The front lot of Estrella was quiet, just the soft hiss of morning wind brushing against the old signage, the faint scent of dust and motor oil clinging to the walls. I unlocked the front door with the brass key my father gave me, the one he insisted I keep on me, just in case. Inside, nothing had changed. The same cracked tile floor, the dent in the filing cabinet from when Marcus had kicked it during a teenage tantrum. I walked past the register, the shelves, into the back office. I stood there for a long moment. The desk was still pushed against the far wall, a dusty photo of Dad and I taped to the side. I moved the desk slowly, carefully, revealing the floorboard beneath, one that had always been a shade darker, slightly lifted at the corner. I pried it up, and there it was. A black safe. Old, square, unassuming, until I used the key labeled Estrella. The click was soft but final. The door creaked open to reveal a sealed envelope, a small black USB drive, and a roll of foreign currency so faded I couldn't tell which country it came from. The envelope had my name on it. Again, his handwriting. Again, that weight in my chest. I didn't open anything there. I tucked the contents into my bag and locked the place back up. On the way out, I whispered into the quiet air, "You were right. You never left this place empty." Back home, the house was quiet. Eris had left for school. I closed the blinds, made a fresh pot of coffee, and opened my laptop. The USB drive loaded quickly. Dozens of files appeared, but one folder caught my eye. Confession. Inside was a single video file, labeled "For Maribel Only." I clicked it. The screen lit up with my father's face. Thinner than I remembered, his cheeks sunken, his voice calm but deliberate. "If you're watching this, mija, then you found the key. Good. I always knew you'd look where others wouldn't." He leaned forward slightly. "There are things you never knew about me, about Estrella. It was never just a gas station, it was a safe house. I worked with a federal task force during the 80s and 90s. Linguistics, logistics, protection. We handled information, passed messages, stored sensitive records when digital wasn't safe yet." He paused. "I kept everything quiet. For your safety, for the girls, and because I knew not everyone in this family would honor what we protected." He gave a small, tired smile. "You stayed. You didn't chase power. You didn't fake legacy. You saw people. That's why I left you everything. That's why I kept you out of the noise." He sat back. "If you open this, if you decide to carry this forward, know that you're not alone. But you'll need to be smart, quiet, brave, just like your mother was." And then the video faded to black. I sat there, my hand covering my mouth, tears silently streaking down my cheeks. For a long time, I didn't move. Eris entered the room slowly. She saw the frozen screen, my face. "He really believed in you, didn't he?" I nodded. "Now I believe in me, too." I stood, walked over to the hallway, and pulled open the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside were blank folders, some old financial records. I started clearing them, making space. If this was my legacy, I was going to treat it like one. That night, the house was still. I sat at the kitchen table, sorting documents, marking dates. The power flickered once, then again. "Mom," Eris whispered from the living room window, "there's someone outside, watching." I stood quickly but quietly. I slid the folder into the vent drawer below the sink and turned off the kitchen light. I moved to the window. A black car idled across the street. No plates visible, just headlights glowing low. Then, slowly, it pulled away. I didn't panic. I didn't call anyone. I just whispered to myself, "I'm not scared. I've got a plan now." The letter came without a return address. Plain white envelope, no markings, no handwriting. At first, I thought it was another legal notice, maybe another petition from Callista's lawyers trying to shut me up. But when I opened it, it didn't read like a threat. It read like a warning. Or maybe a crack from inside the wall. The message was typed, clean. If you're serious about the truth, look into Breckenridge's latest client list. Not everyone she fixes is clean. No name, no sign-off. Just that. The moment I read it, my stomach dropped. Not from fear, but from the sudden weight of clarity. Someone inside Callista's camp had decided to talk. And if they were risking this much to send me that, there had to be something worth hiding. I didn't waste time. I pulled up an old contact of my father's, retired sheriff's investigator. Name was Dwayne Keller. He still owed Dad a few favors, and I figured if anyone could help me untangle Callista's PR mess, it'd be him. We met that same afternoon in the back of a diner, the kind where no one blinked twice at two people passing manila folders between cups of black coffee. "Here," he said, sliding over a stack of papers. "I ran a public audit on the firms she's contracted with. There's overlap with a real estate group out of Houston, Braemont Holdings, Shell Company, tied to two others, both flagged for campaign fund laundering." I stared at the web of connections he'd traced. And Callista? Her agency cleans up their public records, hides affiliations, spins bad press. I leaned back. So she's not just stealing gas stations. She's laundering reputations. Exactly. That night, I went home and started building a wall. Not to keep people out, but to see clearly. I took over the back bedroom, pinned newspaper clippings, printouts, emails. I used the same system Dad taught me when I helped him log truck deliveries as a kid. Red for betrayal, blue for legal exposure, yellow for leverage. I stood back, Sharpie still in hand, and whispered, "When someone crosses a line, you draw a new one. In ink." The next morning, I dressed without thinking. Black shirt, flat shoes. The folder labeled Backup Copy A, Legal Disclosure, fit perfectly in my purse. I didn't call, didn't schedule. I walked straight into Callista's office lobby, nodded at the receptionist who clearly knew my face, and dropped the folder on her desk. "I'm not staying," I said. She blinked. "Should I tell Ms. Breckenridge?" "Tell her I've started drawing lines of my own." And I left. By noon, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Unknown numbers, blocked calls. I let them ring. A text came in from a mutual friend. "What did you do? Callista's having a full meltdown at the office." I didn't respond. I didn't smile either. I just opened my laptop and uploaded the folder to a secure drive, naming it Truth Rules 01, locking it behind a password only I would remember. Late that night, I took out the trash. The air was thick, sticky with that heavy Texas humidity that makes even silence feel loud. As I stepped out, something crunched under my sandal. Glass. I looked down. My car tires, slashed, deflated, useless. Spray paint splashed across my garage door in crooked, jagged strokes. "Stay in your lane." I stared at it for a full minute. Not because I was scared, because I wasn't. Then I went back inside, picked up the burner phone Dwayne had given me for emergencies, and dialed. "We're going public," I said. "It's time." Saturday morning came with a heaviness in the air. Not quite storm, not quite calm. Just that kind of weight you feel before something shifts. I stood at the folding table I'd set up in the community center's small stage room, laying out every piece of evidence I had like a surgeon prepping for operation. Each folder had a label. Each photo had a timestamp. The slideshow on the projector was cued. Background black. First slide reading. Restoration, not revenge. I heard Dad's voice in my mind again, from that video. "Make it count, mija." And I would. By 10 o'clock, the room was filling. Local journalists, community leaders, even a reporter from Austin who'd driven down to see what the fuss was about. I didn't look for Callista. I knew she wouldn't come. Not out of shame. She didn't have any. But because she couldn't control the spotlight if she didn't own the stage. I stepped up to the podium as the chatter died down. My name is Maribel Ridgway, I began, and this isn't a press conference about family drama. This is about truth. This is about trust, how easily it's broken, and how hard it is to restore. I held up a copy of the forged will, projected it on the screen. This document was filed by my sister Callista Breckenridge, presented as my father's final wishes. But it wasn't signed while he was conscious. Medical logs prove that. Handwriting experts confirm the signature was not his. I clicked to the next slide. My father's video confession. People shifted in their seats. I'm not here to humiliate her, I said, but I won't protect a lie either. I clicked again. Email chains between Callista's PR firm and shell companies linked to real estate fraud. Scans of bank transfers. Audio from a former contractor who admitted to shredding internal memos. I handed out folders. Not digital files, real paper. Evidence they could hold. The room buzzed like a hornet's nest. Whispers, gasps, phones vibrating. A man in the back, older, maybe mid-60s, raised his hand. Is Ms. Breckenridge under federal investigation? I answered plainly. Not yet. But after today, I'd be shocked if that didn't change. Later that afternoon, I sat in my kitchen, drinking lukewarm coffee, watching Callista's damage control unfold on my phone. She'd recorded a video, posted it to her social media, with the caption, "Family deserves peace." In the clip, her tone was soft. She wore light blue, no makeup. I'm heartbroken my sister feels this way. We all grieve differently. I just hope we can find our way back to each other someday. No mention of the documents. No denial. But no admission either. She's still playing chess, I muttered, while I'm flipping the board. The tide turned fast. That night, my inbox flooded. People thanking me, sharing stories. A director from a local nonprofit emailed, "We'd be honored to have you speak at our summit on truth and resilience." It was the first time someone called me the strong one in public. The right one. But as always, just when the light peeked through, the dark reminded me it was still watching. Around 9, Eris handed me a manila envelope left at our door. No postage, just our names scrawled on the front. Inside was a photo. Eris, leaving school that day, taken from across the street. The second item, a note. Back off, last warning. My stomach didn't drop, my hand didn't shake. I stepped onto the porch, scanned the street slowly. A cat darted across the neighbor's lawn. A porch light flicked on down the block. I walked back inside, picked up the phone, and dialed. It rang twice. A man answered. "Langston." "It's Maribel Ridgway. I need you to activate full protocol." He didn't ask why. He just said, "Understood." I hung up. I stopped protecting the past. Now I had to protect the future. The quiet that followed the press conference didn't feel like peace. It felt staged, like someone had muted the world just before slamming a door. I woke up Sunday morning to a house too still, air too still, even Eris sleeping later than usual. There was no news alert, no angry call, no panicked knock. But that kind of silence isn't safety. It's warning. I brewed coffee and sat at the kitchen counter, the morning light hitting the window in thin slices. On the table sat the same folders I'd shown to the media 2 days ago, untouched, but not forgotten. I knew the real fallout hadn't even started. By noon, I'd made my way back to Estrella to check the locks, walk the perimeter, and reassure myself that the property still belonged to me in more than name. I wasn't alone. A black SUV with government plates pulled into the lot before I even finished unlocking the front door. A man in his 60s stepped out, tan jacket, no badge showing, but the kind of posture that said, "I don't knock." "You Maribel Ridgway?" he asked. I didn't answer with fear, just nodded. "Mind if I come in?" He walked past me like the invitation was implied. Inside the office, he scanned the walls, the counter, even the uneven paint line on the back wall. Then he turned to me and said, "You've inherited more than you realize." Meaning? This station. It's flagged in multiple declassified records. Covert use in the 80s, early 90s. Storage, drops, encoded transmissions. Nothing formal now, but it was a registered hub. That matters, even if it hasn't been touched in years. I folded my arms. Are you here to seize it? No, ma'am, we're not taking it, but we are watching, and so is everyone else. He handed me a card, blank on the front, a single number printed in back. You didn't just inherit property, you inherited visibility. Make sure you know who's looking. By evening, I'd bought 2 new deadbolts, installed 3 cameras myself, and bolted a small safe into the back wall of the gas station behind a plywood panel. I wasn't being paranoid. I was being thorough. Eris watched from the door, arms crossed, her face a mix of worry and understanding. Mom, she asked quietly, am I safe at school? I crouched beside her, looked her straight in the eye. You're not just safe, I said. You're defended. That night, she went to bed early. I sat up with a flashlight and a socket wrench, checking every camera angle twice. Around midnight, I stepped outside to dump the trash. That's when I saw it, spray-painted in jagged red letters across the garage. You think you're untouchable? I froze. Not from fear, but calculation. Below the message, a small plastic bag was taped to the door. I peeled it off. Inside, a USB. I didn't plug it in. Not right away. I called Langston. What's the fastest way to encrypt a drive I haven't even opened yet? His voice didn't waver. Bring it in. Do not connect it to your home system. Do not forward it. You've just crossed into another bracket. By the time I got back inside, the wind had picked up. Something sharp in the air, something about to snap. I poured myself a glass of water, sat down at the table, and brought up the new security camera feed. I clicked through the recordings, fast-forwarding at first, then slowing at the moment the spray paint appeared. 2 figures, both in dark hoodies, one holding the can. The other, taller, standing to the side, watching. As I zoomed in, my breath caught. One of them was wearing a lanyard, with a press badge, from my conference. I leaned back, heart beating slow and low. So it wasn't just family I was exposing. It was just past 7 when the sirens started. Eris and I were halfway through breakfast, her cereal soggy, my coffee lukewarm, when red and blue lights lit up the curtains. I stood slowly, my fork still in my hand, and walked to the window. Unmarked vehicles, flashing lights, uniformed agents spilling out in tight formation. One of them pointed at the gas station across the street. Eris stood behind me. Are they here for us? I took a breath. If they are, I said calmly, they'll learn today who they've underestimated. I stepped onto the porch just as 2 agents broke off toward our driveway. I didn't flinch, didn't move. I pulled my phone out and started recording. Steady hand, no commentary. A 3rd car parked by the gas station, and a man stepped out. He wasn't in uniform, just a badge clipped to his belt and a calm, practiced expression on his face. He spotted me and walked over. Ms. Ridgway? He asked. I nodded. I'm Agent Lennox. We're not here to arrest you. We're here to protect the evidence you're sitting on. I blinked. Excuse me? He motioned toward the gas station. You have files, physical and digital, that are now central to a larger investigation into interstate fraud, laundering, and political corruption. You're late, I said. The press already saw them. That's why we're here. Your truth started something we can't ignore. He reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope, sealed, with the Department of Justice watermark on the flap. This is for you. I opened it slowly. Inside was a formal letter of recognition, signed by an assistant director at the FBI. In acknowledgement of your contributions to ongoing federal investigations and for preserving material critical to national interests, the letter didn't offer money or apology, but it offered something rarer, validation. Agent Lennox added, Your father, he protected this country longer than most people knew, and now, so have you. An hour later, the news vans pulled up, but this time, they weren't here to humiliate me. They were here to cover a story. A real one. A young reporter stepped forward, mic in hand, and asked, "Ms. Ridgway, is it true your father used the gas station as a safe house for government operations?" I looked right at the camera. People thought this was just a gas station. Turns out it's a national case file. "And how do you feel about what's happening now?" she followed. I smiled, but not with my mouth, just with my presence. "Truth never needed volume," I said. "Just daylight." That afternoon, reports came in. 2 of Callista's clients were arrested in a sweep related to Braemont Holdings. Her firm was officially under audit. The agency website went offline. Her attorney requested a meeting with me to negotiate an outcome. I declined. If she wants closure, I told her legal team, she can find it in court. That evening, as the sun dipped low and Eris worked on homework in the living room, I decided to clear out the rest of the cabinet where I'd stored my father's military flag. Tucked behind the frame, almost invisible, was a second envelope. Thinner. Yellowed. My name in faded ink. I sat at the kitchen table and opened it with steady hands. The letter inside was short. His handwriting, uneven, but still strong. "If they ever come for you, remind them you're my daughter." I read the sentence 3 times before folding the paper and placing it in the safe next to the federal letter. I didn't need his protection anymore, but I carried his promise. I opened the shop that morning with no rush, no music, no sense of ceremony. Just the rhythm of keys in locks and blinds sliding up with a tug. Dawn still hung in the air like a leftover thought. Quiet, faded gold. The gas station didn't feel like a gas station anymore. It hadn't for weeks. It felt like something between a shell and a shrine. I swept the office floor, not because it was dirty, but because I needed to move my hands. Needed to remind myself that I was still the one who controlled what happened inside these walls now. I touched the window glass, traced the ghost of that red spray paint that had long since been washed off. You don't clean things like that to forget. You clean them to take ownership. You don't rebuild because it's easy, I said aloud. You rebuild because leaving it in ruins would feel worse. That same afternoon, a letter arrived. Typed, sealed, no frills. Callista's signature move. It wasn't a legal threat, nor a guilt trip, just a few short lines. "I'm sorry for how this unfolded. Maybe we were both protecting the wrong things." I held it for a minute. Thought about what it took for her to send that. Thought about how much it still didn't say. Then I tore it in half, tossed it into the fireplace, and watched it vanish. Closure isn't something someone hands you. It's something you decide you're done chasing. Later that week, I sat in the back row of the school auditorium, surrounded by clapping parents and the scent of too much cologne. Eris stood on stage, smiling nervously as her teacher announced the award for Outstanding Historical Essay. Her paper was titled "The Power of Quiet Resistance." When she looked at me in the crowd, her eyes lit up. Not because I was perfect, not because I was strong, but because I was hers. And that was enough. Back at Estrella, I'd turned the old customer service desk into something else entirely. A help station, a legal corner, a place for mothers like me who got tired of being talked over by banks, landlords, and lawyers. I painted over the back wall myself, took 2 coats to fully cover the past. Then I stenciled a quote across the surface. My father's words from years ago. "Justice begins where someone dares to stay." And they came, not for gas, not for gossip, but for guidance. I'd become the thing my family tried to erase, something permanent. One afternoon, I noticed her, Callista, standing across the street, sunglasses pushed up into her hair, just watching. We locked eyes for only a moment. She didn't wave. Neither did I, but she nodded, just once, and I gave a half smile in return. Not from forgiveness, from freedom. She turned away first. That evening, after Eris had gone to bed and the porch light had clicked on, I settled in to sort old files I still hadn't touched. I reached behind the framed flag that had hung in my father's office since before I was born, and I felt it. A thin envelope. No label. just a crease where the paper had aged in shadow. I opened it. Maribel, it read, if they ever come for you, remind them you're my daughter. I folded it gently, pressed it to my chest. It wasn't about needing protection anymore. It was about carrying a legacy without asking for permission. 2 weeks after Agent Langston's voicemail, I met him at the old storage unit my father had kept for decades. It was tucked behind Estrella, camouflaged by overgrown bushes, and a rusting ice machine no one had ever used. I'd passed it 100 times, never thinking it held more than oil filters and faded invoices. Langston stood by the metal door, arms crossed, envelope in hand. Your father left this with us years ago, he said, voice even. Instructions were clear. Only deliver it if you stayed. I stayed, I said. He handed me the box. It was heavier than it looked. Inside, wrapped in aged velvet, lay a small brass key I didn't recognize, a thick binder labeled R. Ridgway, OPSEC manual, and a plaque. I didn't unwrap it right away. That evening, I walked the perimeter of Estrella as the sky bruised into dusk. I stopped at the back wall, the last untouched corner where the spray paint had once read, "Stay in your lane." I unwrapped the plaque slowly, hands steady this time. It was dark wood, with a polished metal plate engraved in thick serif letters. Roberto Ridgway immigrant, patriot, father. Only one child stood beside me. That's why she holds the key. I read it twice before I mounted it, covering the last scar on the wall. The next morning, people came. Not just the locals who needed help with lease disputes or child custody paperwork. Reporters, community leaders, a retired agent who served with my father in Panama, and strangers, people who'd read, watched, or simply heard. One older man with a Vietnam patch on his cap walked up to me and said, "We knew he trusted you. Now everyone does." By noon, news headlines rolled in. Gas station tied to intelligence past reborn as community legal center. Daughter of covert asset launches, nonprofit for whistleblowers and mothers. At home, Eris sat at the kitchen table, doing homework, as I typed the nonprofit charter. We'd call it the Ridgway Trust. Its mission: provide legal aid and protection to those who speak truth when silence would be safer. The local school district asked to feature my story in their civics curriculum. I agreed, on one condition. They included my father's words. Justice is not about punishment, I told a room full of students a week later. It's about proving that love outlives betrayal. I never saw Callista again in person. I didn't need to. Her firm dissolved. Her name blacklisted. The audio of her conversations leaked eventually. But it didn't bring me joy, just closure. One evening, Eris and I moved into the apartment above the gas station. We replaced the cracked blinds, scrubbed the old sink, and framed the only photo I'd kept whole, our family, before everything fractured. I hung it next to Dad's flag and the FBI letter of recognition. He taught me to fix things, I told Eris as she stood beside me, even when people said they were beyond repair. That night, I turned off the last light, locked the front door, and slipped the key into my pocket. I stepped outside into the night air. The stars looked like they had something to say, and for once, I wasn't afraid to listen. I didn't inherit a gas station, I whispered. I inherited a story that didn't end with him. It started with me.